Hello everyone. In the last lecture, we have seen how the branching and looping helps in increasing the programmability and program execution. Continuing further, now let us see how the next concept, that is subroutine, helps in improving the programmability and helps in better program execution. Subroutines. This is a routine which is written outside the main routine called as subroutine. Now the question arises, why this subroutine is written outside the main routine or outside the main program? The first answer for this question is, in order to minimize the length of the code and in order to minimize the memory required for the program and in order to optimize the program. Now let us take an example to show the need of the subroutine. Now let us assume we are going to interface a stepper motor to our DSP processor, and we all know that the stepper motor rotates in discrete steps. That is why the stepper motor is called as stepper motor, which rotates in discrete steps. In order to cover the 360 degree, it takes around 200 steps. In each step, it rotates by a factor of 1.8 degree. For this, we can write either ROR or ROL depending on the clockwise direction rotation or the anti-clockwise direction with respect to an accumulator, each time by single step. After rotating the stepper motor towards right or left with respect to the accumulator by 1, then what we are supposed to do? We are supposed to introduce a delay. That delay is standard throughout the 200 steps. For that purpose, we have to write on delay program. Okay, delay program. Then once again we have to use this rotate instruction ROR/ROL. Then once again what we are supposed to do? After each rotation, it has to give a delay of specified amount of delay. Let us assume 1 second or half a second between each step. Then if you write the program in this fashion, then what happens? Then obviously the length of the program will increase. In order to overcome this type of concept, or in order to overcome this type of scenario, what we are going to do? We are going to write this delay program separately out of the main program only once, and we can call that program as many number of times we want in the main program. Thereby what happens? Thereby the memory required for the program execution is limited and the length of the program will also be minimized. In this way, the subroutine will be going to work out. For this purpose, we can modify the program after rotating towards right or left. What we are supposed to do? We have to call delay program. This delay, this call instruction will transfer this program, this flow to the delay procedure. There we can see the program for introducing delay, and after that the subroutine is ended with end P. That means that procedure is ended. After that we resume our normal flow of operation. In order to continue this program, we have to preload the number of steps, that is 200 in a register, separate register, or in a counter means. According to that, counter will be decremented in each and every step. As soon as the counter reaches 0, the stepper motor will stop rotating. Okay. Here what we can see is, by writing the delay program once, we can use it 200 times or n number of times for our program. Otherwise, what happens? The delay program will be replaced in the main program 200 times. Thereby it increases the memory requirement and thereby it slows down the speed of operation. While calling the subroutine, what happens? Now let us see. Now, as soon as you call the delay or call the subroutine, then before going to branch to the subroutine program, what the processor will do? The processor will save the return address. Return address. Why you have to save the return address? For the purpose of resuming from which instruction we have to proceed further. For that purpose, we are saving the return address. That means after this instruction end P, we have to come back and execute the further instructions after call delay. Then, where to save this return address? In order to save this return address, a separate area is maintained, that is called as stack. Stack is a temporary storage area which is accessed by using two instructions, that is push and pop. What happens with respect to push instruction? In the push instruction, we are saving the return address onto the stack, and after concluding the subroutine, we are supposed to come back and resume the normal flow of operation. For that purpose, we are using pop instruction. Push instruction saves the return address, whereas pop instruction retrieves the return address that is stored in the stack. Here, we have to notice one thing. In case of the microprocessor, what happens, and in case of DSP, what happens while saving the return address. Saving return address in case of microprocessor and how to save the return address in case of DSP. Now let us try to notice the difference between these two processors. In microprocessor, what happens is the concept of stack is implemented with respect to the memory associated in the processor memory itself. Stack is a part of processor memory. Processor memory. If this is the case, then what happens? With respect to saving the return address, not only saving the return address with respect to the part of the memory associated with respect to the processor, and also it has to restore it on return. It has to restore it on return. And during this, what happens? The in and out communication will happen between the processor and the memory. Between the processor and the memory with respect to the system bus. System bus is used to access the stack. Then what happens? This obviously slows down the accessing the operation, slows down in accessing the operands, and in order to operate the subroutine programs. Thereby, this type of scenario will be seen in case of microprocessor. On the other hand, in DSP, we know that speed is a critical issue. We have to execute the instructions in a faster way. For that purpose, it is desirable here in case of DSP to have a last in, first out buffer. Last in, and we know that the stack operates with respect to the last in, first out manner or last in, first out principle. A last in, first out buffer is directly interfaced to the program counter. It is directly interfaced to the program counter. Thereby, the program counter itself is going to save the return address, and in this case, there is no question of the data movement between the memory and the data bus, and thereby increasing the speed of the operation associated with respect to the subroutines. The LIFO buffer is directly interfaced to the program counter. Which stores the return address. This matters. Here, the program counter itself is directly involved in storing the return address. That is not the case in case of microprocessor. Here, in order to store the return address, memory, the processor memory is going to play the role. Thereby, the processor is incorporated with respect to storing the return address and also restoring the program with respect to the part of the same memory. Okay? In this way, we can see the difference between how the return address is stored with respect to a general purpose microprocessor and a digital signal processor with respect to the technique of subroutine. That is going to help in increasing the programmability and program execution. Okay? After understanding the various programming techniques, that is the looping, branching and subroutines, now let us try to understand the concept of program control and program sequencer. Program control and program sequencer. First, let us study the concept of program control. The term program control is related to the control unit of the processor. In general, we know that the CPU is known as the central processing unit, and that is nothing but divided into two parts. This CPU is divided into two parts, that is the CU and EU. CU refers to control unit and the term EU refers to the execution unit. Execution unit. Now, if we study this part, that is program controllability, or with respect to the control unit, if you study this unit, then the execution unit will become easy. That means, if you know how the control unit is going to work, then how the execution unit is going to be work. In this case, the execution unit is dependent on the control unit. How well the control unit is controlled for the purpose of program. If that is the case, then execution goes in a smooth way. If the control is not achieved to a greater extent, then execution will also not in a proper way. In order to take the execution of the program in a proper way, we have to concentrate on the control unit. How the program control is achieved in order to accessing the instructions and in order to execute the instructions. Now let us define what the control unit is going to provide. The control unit is held responsible for generating proper control and timing signals that are required for proper execution of instructions. As we have seen in the last case, that is with respect to the subroutine, where how the return address is stored in case of microprocessor and how the return address is stored in case of DSP. Here also we can have a comparison of how the control is achieved with respect to the microprocessor and how the control unit is going to act in case of the DSP processor. In case of microprocessor, the control unit is executed in terms of, or in other words, an instruction is broken down into several micro instructions. What we are doing here? First, we are taking an instruction. That instruction is being broken down into several micro instructions, and those micro instructions are being stored in a micro store, and they are stored in a micro store. Here, what we are going to do in order to achieve the control, the first is the instruction is broken down into several micro instructions. Then that several micro instructions are being stored in micro store. Then, if we want to access any instruction, then what we are supposed to do? We have to call that micro instructions. We have to call the necessary micro instructions that are going to take part in executing that particular instruction, which are stored in a micro store. Then what we are doing, we are interested in executing a certain instruction that is stored in a micro store in terms of several micro instructions. Okay. Then, if you want to execute as an instruction, you have to call the micro instruction that is stored in micro store. Then, this is going to reflect with respect to the communication between the program and subprogram, or between a routine and a subroutine. Then what happens? If you want to execute particular instruction, we are going to calling the several micro instructions that are going to take part in executing the particular instruction. Thereby what happens? Thereby the concept of saving the return address comes into picture, the concept of stack comes into picture. Then this increases the access time, and then it reduces the speed of the processor. If you follow this type of control unit, that is a standard form of microprocessor that is incorporated in terms of microprocessor, then what we are going to see? We are going to see that the time taken to access the several micro instructions is very, very large. Thereby the speed of the processor will be decreased. Okay. In order to increase the speed of the processor, what we are going to do on the other hand with respect to the DSP processor is that here the control unit is designed in terms of a hardwired design. Here what we are doing, here we are having a single or a comprehensive instruction set that is designed in terms of a hardware. Single or comprehensive instruction set is designed in terms of hardware. Thereby, the speed of the processor will be high in case of DSP compared to the microprocessor. Here, no need of accessing the instructions each and every time associated with respect to subroutine. We have a dedicated instruction set that is designed in terms of a hardware. The entire instruction set is available at one hardware unit. The thing is, if you want to incorporate any changes in between, then it is quite difficult. Okay, the thing here that is not quite difficult, it is very easy. As and when we require to do changes in terms of modifying the program is not a big issue. As and when we require to modify the instruction set, this is going to give some sort of complexity because all the instruction set are been designed in terms of a hardwired unit. Here it is called as microprogrammed control unit, or in the words, this is called as hardwired control unit. By this we can see the hardwired control unit is having high speed, the microcoded control is having less speed. Here the advantage is, the modification is not a big issue. Here the modification is a issue, and the complexity associated in hardware control is more. Here the complexity is very, very less in incorporating the control unit. In this way, the program control unit is achieved in case of general purpose microprocessor and the application specific, that is digital signal processor. Okay. The next concept is the program sequencer. Here, this term is going to be very interesting, that is the sequencer. The program sequencer is a part of a control unit. Okay, this program sequencer is a part of the control unit which is responsible in generating the instruction address in which sequence the program is to executed. The program sequencer is a part of the control unit which generates instruction addresses in the sequence needed to access the instruction. This program sequencer is going to generate the instruction addresses in sequence according to the sequence to access the instructions that are stored in the memory. Normally, the instructions are going to be executed in the order of which they are stored in memory. How they are stored in memory, on that basis the program instruction sequence will going to happen. But there are some exceptions to this case. In case of branching, and in case of looping, and in case of subroutine. Here we have to note one thing. If you are not following any of the three methods in our program, then it goes in a sequence way, that is stored in memory. As per the storage associated with respect to memory, the instructions are going to be executed in sequential way. If in case in the program we are going to make use of branching, looping, subroutine, all three or any one of the techniques in our program, then what happens? Then the normal flow will not going to occur. Then the program sequencer has to work in order to generate the address of the next instruction by calculating with respect to a part of control unit. Then in case of this program sequencer, the instruction address will not be in a linear or in a sequential manner. It is going to change according to the techniques associated in our program. Now let us see the block diagram of the program sequencer and see how the program sequencer is going to calculate the address of the next instruction, that is fetch from the memory. The address the instruction which is going to be fetched from the memory with respect to the program counter has to increment, which is going in a sequential way. Or in other words, if you are following looping or branching with respect to the certain instructions, for example, branching or looping and subroutine follows one type of instructions. Here we can see jump, here we can see with respect to number of the counter value pertaining to the number of times it has to work in a loop based on the predefined count value. And here with respect to the program that is written outside the main program, and in order to know the return address based on the return address. Now we can see the block diagram of the program sequencer. Here in this block diagram we can see a mux, the multiplexer, which is going to give the output as next address with the inputs as the stack, IVT, that is the interrupt vector table that is associated in handling the interrupts, and instructions, the general instructions, and PC increment with respect to the program count. Here the output of all 4 blocks is the address, particular address. On that basis, the next address is going to be generated. The next address calculation is based on the any one of the 4 cases. This many to one mux is going to work on the basis of any one of the 4 cases. In the first case, the PC which is incremented after each instruction fetch. If we are dealing with respect to the instruction fetch that is in a sequential way, then this will be selected and this will be given as the next address. Or the instruction register which holds the address of the instruction in branching, looping and subroutine calls, that is with respect to this case. Here jump, that is with respect to the conditional jump or unconditional jump. With respect to the conditional jump, that is going to affect on the status flag based on the results associated with respect to the status flag, that is if there is carry, jump if carry, or if jump if 0, like that. On the basis of status flag, the jump is going to occur. Or if you are handling the subroutine type of instructions, then call instruction will going to affect. That is going to alter the sequence of flow, the sequence of normal flow. Then next, interrupt vector table in case of interrupt service routine. And we all know that in case of interrupt, what is interrupt? Interrupt is an external signal to the processor that is seeking some sort of service from the processor. By referring to the priority in the interrupt table, the processor will give the service. Before going to give the service, before going to run the ISR, that is interrupt service routine, the processor has to save its return address. For that purpose, this address is given. And stack, which holds the return address in case of return from the subroutines ISR, that is interrupt service routine, and in case of end of loops with respect to the count value. The count value is predefined. Then we refer this block. Here return from subroutine. Here IRET refers to the return from interrupt. RET refers to return from subroutine, whereas IRET refers to return from interrupt. Based on the selection of any one of these block, the next address is calculated. Like this, the program sequencer is going to work. After seeing the program sequencer, now let us try to understand the concept, that is the speed issues in DSP architecture. We know that the fast execution of algorithms is required in case of DSP architecture. In order to meet this requirement, what is the requirement? The faster execution of algorithms. We are interested in faster execution of algorithms. In order to speed up the execution of algorithms in DSP architecture, what are the requirements we should have? In order to meet this requirement, the DSP architecture must include the features that facilitate the high speed of operation of the algorithms. High speed is needed. Now let us see how to meet this requirement, that is the high speed of operation that increases the throughput. Increase in throughput. What do we mean the term throughput? Throughput refers to the number of instructions executed per unit time. That means here, along with increasing the speed of operation, you have to, and thereby you have to increase the throughput that is incorporated in our DSP architecture. In order to meet the high speed and high throughput, we are going to use two techniques, parallelism in the first technique and the second technique used is pipelining. Now let us see how the technique parallelism increases the speed of operation and thereby increases the throughput. The term parallelism may mean several things. This term will not going to work with respect to a single unit. In order to make this term meaningful, we have to consider more than one unit. Here the unit refers to the functional units. Unit here refers to functional unit. A single unit alone cannot adopt the technique of parallelism. In order to adopt the technique of parallelism, we should use more than one unit or multiple functional units. Here the functional unit, let us take an example to consider the ALU. If you have only one ALU, what happens? This ALU will be responsible for the computation of data and address. Data and address computation. Instead of having a single ALU, if you have more than one ALU, then the second ALU will be held responsible for address computation. Address computation. That means if you have a separate arithmetic unit to handle address computation, then this second arithmetic unit will frees up the main arithmetic unit that can concentrate on the data computation. That can entirely concentrate on the data computation. Thereby, it increases the speed and also increases the throughput. Okay. Likewise, in earlier cases, we have already discussed with respect to the provision of multiple memory and multiple buses. Why we are required with respect to the multiple memory and multiple buses? For the sake of enhancing the speed of operation. How the speed is enhanced there? With respect to the multiple memory and multiple buses, we can fetch the instruction and operand simultaneously. That makes fetching instruction and operand, instructions and operands simultaneously. By fetching the instructions and operands simultaneously, obviously the speed will be increased and thereby the throughput is also increased. In order to do so, here we require a complex hardware design. This requires a complex hardware design for better control. For better control. That means the control unit here is little bit complex. But the thing is, even though the control unit here is complex in nature, the outcome is good. That means we are achieving both the high speed as well as the high throughput. Here the control unit is with respect to the hardwired control unit rather than using the micro-coded control unit. With this, several operations can take place at the same time, such as adding while carrying out the multiplication and shifting while reading the data from the memory. Two operations at the same time. After understanding the first technique in order to increase the speed of operation and throughput, that is parallelism, now let us try to understand the second technique, that is pipelining. The pipelining is the second approach to increase the speed of operation and thereby increasing the throughput. Here, in case of pipelining, an instruction, a single instruction is being broken down into several number of steps. Okay, and then that several number of steps will take several number of units of time. According to the divided number of steps, the unit time for each step is given. With respect to unit time of each step, the pipelining principle is going to work. In order to understand, let us draw a pipeline structure to understand the same. This is the structure of the pipelining principle. In this, we have some 6 instructions. Okay, we have taken 6 instructions. The first instruction, the instruction 1 is divided into several steps. The steps is, say, 5 steps. We have divided into 5 steps for executing each instruction. That means each instruction is going to work in terms of 5 steps. If 5 steps are involved in executing an instruction, or if p steps are involved in execution of a instruction, then it takes p units of time to complete the execution of a single instruction. This is the time, vertical. The horizontal is given in terms of the number of steps taken to execute a single instruction. These steps are nothing but with respect to the various levels. In step 1, we can say fetch, decode. In step 2, we are going to decode the instruction, and in step 3, we are going to access, and in step 4, we are going to read, and in step 5, execute or write. Execute / write, and in next is nothing but storing the result. Here at T0, what happens? The first step is active with respect to the first instruction. The first instruction is in the phase of fetching. Here we are fetching the first instruction in step 1. In time T0, what happens? The first instruction is already being fetched and it is being moved to decode process, decode state. While at the same time, at T1, the second instruction is being fetched. Okay, the second instruction is being moved from the stage of fetch to decode, whereas the first instruction is being moved from decode to access with respect to the memory location. Now the instruction 3 is being fetched in T2, and in T3 what happens? Instruction 4 is being fetched. At the same time, the instruction 3 was fetched in T2 is now being moved to decode, and instruction 2, which was at the decode state, is now at the state of access, and the instruction 1 which was in access state is now ready to read and so on. At the T5 we are going to see that instruction 2 is been completed, and in T4 the instruction 1 is completed. That means after T4, from T3 to T4 what happens? Instruction 1 is been moved to execute or write. In this way we are going to execute the instructions by breaking the instruction into several steps. That is nothing but fetch, decode, access, read, execute and write. Here the problem is with respect to breaking the instruction into several number of steps. That takes pretty much of time. And the second demerit associated in this pipelining phenomena compared to the parallelism concept is that the latency involved in pipelining phenomena. What is the latency here? Here the result is going to get after T4. From T4 time onwards we are going to get the result continuously. But till T3 we have not yet obtained the result. That means this is the latency involved here. From T0 to T3 there is no result. This initial delay creates the latency. This, if you compromise with respect to the latency of the pipelining phenomena, then this phenomena or this concept of pipelining is going to increase the speed of operation and also to increase the throughput. Here with respect to the time T0 to T5 all the units will be working. Okay, not even a single unit is under idle state. All the units will be working. That is the advantage, and the disadvantage lies with respect to the latency. That means from T0 to T3 till T3 we have not got the result. We have to wait for the initial delay for getting the result. Once the first instruction is completed, later on the successive instructions are executed without any delay. Okay? By the method of pipelining and parallelism, we can increase the speed of operation in DSP architecture. This concludes the module 2. Okay? Thank you.